We need to listen to the customer, but what do you do with it? How do you track it? And how do you promote that message to the business? To have a shared language, that means you have to define and create that language. And that language needs to be tangible, it needs to be real. And really taking that lens of customer experience is a go-to market enabler. I mean, we have a vision problem, right, of what the discipline is. We got to be excited about what we can do as professionals and what the discipline brings to a business. If I could wave that magic wand to summarize it, I would change the hearts and minds of all of our people to say everything we do has an impact towards the customer.
My name is Jochem van Veer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called TheyDo, the journey management platform for business decision making. We raised over $50 million and are growing globally. Our enterprise customers include Ford, J&J, the Home Depot, and Pfizer. I mean, wherever you look, understanding customers is key to staying ahead. But in order to do this at scale, aligning so many different teams with the customer journey is incredibly hard, but it is possible. I really wish this podcast existed before we started our company because so many companies are organizing around journeys and there's so much to learn. So in order to share what I'm learning, what I'm hearing with our community, I meet with industry experts. And in my video podcast, I'm here to explore the world of business strategy, design, and journeys, customer journeys, to really get an understanding of how leaders are changing their way in their business. So let's dive into the show. So I'm so much looking forward to this. My guest today is James Munoz. He's the Director of Brand and Employee Experience at Elsevier. He's a transformation leader and a former, and this is interesting, U.S. Army reconnaissance officer with over a decade of military service. So we'll dig into how to lead in chaos, whether it was in the Iraq War, the classroom as a student of religion and human nature, or in the corporate world. James has been driving large-scale transformations for some of the world's most impactful brands, like Wells Fargo and now at Elsevier. So, as leading experience management, program design, journey measurement, and experience strategy for organizations at scale, basically this conversation is about how to lead in chaos. So, James, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. It's an honor and privilege, and looking forward to hopefully a really good conversation. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. And what a great place to start. Typically, we would see people go from banking to brand experience. That's not uncommon. But then having a background in the military and taking that experience to become a customer-centric leader, if you will, that's just a fascinating way to roll into that. So maybe we should start there. And when you look at your profile, what you've said there is like, being in the war is so much more than leading with decision making. It is all about people and understanding them. So what are some of the things that you took away from that experience that made you the leader that you are today, so focused on customer centricity?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. And, I was 17 or 18 when I joined the U.S. military, and for your audience, I'm based in the United States. And so became an Army officer, and that was almost 20 years ago. And so, the biggest thing that I've learned, and this is always looking back, is that there was a certain mantra in the U.S. military around, it was the concept of a soldier first, taking care of soldiers. Everything was about the soldier. Yes, you had a mission, you had a job to do, but at the end of the day, it was really about, are your soldiers taken care of? Do they have the training that they need? The food and the resources and things like that. And so as I process that experience now, I've been out for more than 10 years, it's really human experience, people experience, right? It's about putting in this case, the soldier first, but how that translates to whether it's customer experience or user experience, is putting the customer first, the user first. So it really gave me that foundation of, yes, the military has a job to do and things to make happen, but at the end of the day, it's about people. It's about the human right in front of you. And I think it's the same thing in business and customer experience or user experience or brand. It's about sales and revenue and meeting your KPIs, but at the end of the day, it's also about the human, the end user, the customer, the buyer. It's a human at the end of the interaction. So putting them first. So that's how that was the foundation of what I learned. And so when I got into the field of customer experience, I was like, oh yes, this is intuitive. I've heard this before, I've been here to some extent. I didn't know what journey mapping was or experience design, but I knew, oh, human first. So pretty intuitive. So that's really what I've learned.
How do you roll into that, like going from soldier first to human first? Like that must not have been happening with a coincidence, right? You thought like, oh, I'm gonna be like now in customer experience. Like, how did it transition go? Like, what took you to
Yeah.
take an interest in that and actually like take a commercial career?
Yeah, that's a very good experience. That's the really arc of my history. So, was in the U.S. military for almost 10 years or so, then got out, had tons of questions about life and things like that. So, what does someone do? Well, they go study, right, religion, right, and try to figure life out.
Mm.
So, I did that and worked in that context for a number of years and wanted to get back into the business and corporate world. So, I went to business school, where I studied supply chain and marketing, and somehow that landed me at Bank of America, where I worked on these large transformation project. We had a threefold mandate there at Bank of America on this enterprise transformation team. It was to reduce expenses and make it a great place to work for our employees, and to increase the client experience. So that was my first introduction into customer or client experience. And so I was
That's
like,
not a
wow, this
small
is
transformation. That's like three transformations in one.
yes, yes, that's amazing. I don't have gray hair, but very large, complex problems. But I got the foundation of what does it mean to not just understand the customer experience, but really understand that process and data feed into that whole thing. And so, yeah, I did that for a couple of years and landed at Wells Fargo at Voice of the Customer because I was really intrigued on customer or client experience at Bank of America, but I wanted to get into the product space, be more closer to the customer, if you will. So that landed me at Consumer Credit Card at Wells Fargo, Voice of the Customer. So I got more exposed to the customer experience discipline. And then Elsevier came and said, we need some help from a center of excellence level to advance or accelerate Elsevier's customer-centric transformation. So that's how I got to where I'm at today. And then customer experience eventually evolved into brand and employee. So I've kind of, spread my tentacles far and wide within the experience management world. And in short, that's kind of all that transpired in corporate America for 7 years and military for about 10.
That's
So yeah.
insane. How should we think about voice of customer today? Because where I'm coming from, where I see a lot of organizations struggle, is like they have a VOC program, a voice of customer program,
Hmm.
but all they do is basically sending out surveys and
Yeah.
tracking the metrics that are coming from them and reporting back. So to me, that doesn't sound the way that you are describing what it means to be customer centric and to really drive customer voices through the organization to make change. How should we think
Hmm.
about VOC today?
I think, voice of the customer, every organization has, Elsevier has a voice of the customer program, and it's very good. But it's more than just surveying and trying to understand what our customers are saying, but it's really about what do you do with that data and those issues. And it's super prevalent I'm in a B2B context, a business to business context. So there's even less customers to pull from. You need to try twice as hard to get feedback from customers. So if you're working twice as hard with a limited data set, then we should really act on what our customers are saying. And so how I've always thought of voice of the customer, and this comes from my days at Wells Fargo, is that we need to listen to the customer and identify what are the thematic pain points, and then not just identify what are the thematic pain points, but what do you or how do you disposition those pain points? So now that you have a particular theme, we need to go back to the business and say, business, is this something we want to improve? Is this a risk to the business that we need to uh, resolve? Or is this pain point from what the customer is saying? Is this normal business outcome? Is this just a way of doing business? Because we need to have these conversations. If our customers are always complaining about price, for example, and we're not going to do anything about price, then we as a business need to agree that from an experience perspective, we're not going to address this. So if that's the case, then I'm going to respond a certain way to customers. We're going to close the loop differently, and focus on other initiatives. So it's all about not just hearing what they have to say, but what do you do with it? How do you track it? And how do you promote that message to the business? And that's very difficult to do. Very difficult. Very difficult. It was easier at Wells Fargo, and banking in a regulated industry, but outside of that, it's very difficult cultural challenge.
Oh, why do you think a regulated industry makes it so much
Oh,
more
it's
easy to do this, right? That's the
yeah.
obvious question.
So
But
yes, so banks are heavily regulated, and if you don't behave, you get a slap on the wrist from the government. And so there's something to be said about working for a regulated industry and being held accountable to say, no, you have to listen to your customers, and you have to, if the customers are complaining about balance transfers, then that could be a potential legal issue. And as far as not treating customers well. And so it forced us to really think about the customer. And so that's much more different than a non-regulated industry such as Elsevier, because there's no government entity saying, you need to look at this. So culturally, it's a lot, you have to focus more on culture than regulation. So that's how I've always seen it. And that's kind of what I deal with at Elsevier.
right. So basically, like in other words, what you're saying, and correct me if I'm misinterpreting, but because there is a clear business problem that is known to everyone that can be addressed by listening well to customers and understanding where actually friction exists or where they have
Mm-hmm.
frustration with us. There's a natural way to say, okay, fine, thank you for the insight, and let's do something about it, because there's a business problem that is
Yeah.
pre-identified. For instance, risk is one. We don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be slapped on the wrist, literally,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore, when customers are giving us their feedback, there is already a team or multiple teams willing to
Multiple
listen.
teams.
Versus like in commercial organizations where sometimes, and this is what I'm seeing as well, is like the CX team is a score-based organization. They're
Mm-hmm.
keeping the score, but no one listens to the insights that they're finding. Is that
Yes.
what you're describing there?
Yes, essentially, yeah, because at least in a financial regulated industry, you can always say, listen, we are mandated by the government that you have to at least listen to what we're saying. And some organizations, you don't. It's like, so you have to come at it through a different angle to say, this is about revenue or retention or something like that. You focus on what the business leader or leaders, what they care about, what their KPIs. You have to line it with that. You still have to do this. You still have to do the same thing in regulated industries, but you have that extra power of the government saying you need to do this. So there's pros and cons. There's pros and cons to both.
So you mentioned the current VOC program that is in place at Elsevier is really good.
Mhm.
So you've also seen the bad. Like, what are some characteristics of a good VOC program in your mind?
Yeah. What I think what makes it a good VOC program is you analyze the insights or the data, you get the insights, and then there's a routine in the business with the proper stakeholders to say this is what's happening. Whether it was a Wells Fargo or at Elsevier, we call them quarterly business reviews and say quarterly we're going to come together and gather the right people and say this is what's happening now. Business, how do you want to address it? Oh, and by the way, you're not addressing this alone. There's a customer experience team. There's some other team out there that will support you and help you with this. And so to me, that is a hallmark of a great VOC program because that's not just a data analysis program. To me, that is a cultural program because now you're changing culture. Now you're forcing the business and leaders to say, huh, on a quarterly routine, I have to join this 1 hour meeting. Why am I here? And so that gets them to think to pay attention and to say, okay, this is a consistent pain point. So to me, it's a cultural change initiative, not just a VOC program.
So let me be devil's advocate a little bit, right? It's like QBR, quarterly business review.
Hmm.
So you come there, present the new insights that you've identified, and the business will accept them or not accept them and say, yes, we're going to do something about it. There's teams ready to execute. And sometimes it might be like, yes, we agree it's a problem, but we're not going to take action. Aren't we like extremely slow and not like agile to really take on what we're hearing today? And then we have to wait to the next QBR to even bring that up to some people that can make decisions on the back of that. And ultimately, that might lead to change 6, 12, 18 months down the line. Isn't that the wrong way to think about it? Like playing devil's advocate a little bit?
No, that's actually a very interesting way to think about it. I've never thought about that before. Um, hmm, you're probably going to shatter my whole world now because that's a very interesting way to think about it. I never really. Then again, I come from historically a banking organization where everything moves slow anyway, so we thought we were moving fast, right? No, but you bring up some. Yeah, so those are yes. So in that context, I guess I would kind of reflect back and think, okay, these are large systemic issues, but then there's somewhere in those analyses in the voice of the customer program, there's quick wins that could be identified, more operational, more tactical things that we can solve, and we can bring issues to light in those meetings, and then offline with stakeholders to say, okay, what is the low-hanging fruit? So maybe it's that kind of conversation that's presented to the business in terms of big strategic items, smaller tactical items, and then that can help prioritize and and address some of these issues. But no, you bring up a very interesting point. I need to chew on that a little bit.
Maybe we can chew on it during the conversation because like
Yeah.
this is the number one challenge for a lot of organizations, right? And it's also like maybe not even it is maybe the right solution at the right time. For over the last decade or so, the best way to capture feedback was through survey programs
Yeah.
and to really like do primary research that was funded. There was a project, there was a timeline. So it also made sense to have like these quarterly rituals in line with how the business operates. But given where tools are today, maybe that doesn't make sense anymore. We can capture, analyze feedback so much faster, almost instant. We can get that in the hands of the teams that actually can make decisions right here and now. And I have no impression that an enterprise organization will go and have like this perfect, like continuous cycle between insight and strategic alignment and decision making and delivery to the customer. And it's like a beautiful, like well-oiled machine. It's just the nature of a large scale organization that preventing it from doing it. But I do believe like there is a gap between a quarterly cadence versus like a more structured
Yes.
cadence in a.
Yep. No, you're right. And so as you're speaking, I'm really thinking about when I was in banking, I was on the customer experience and measurement team. And so I'm not speaking on behalf of them, but intuitively, I'm thinking, okay, maybe there was something to your comment because I was involved in a number of projects where we were trying to create real-time dashboards, because financial services organizations, at least in the U.S., are data rich. We have so much data, it's not even
Yeah.
funny. So we were able to plug in into dashboards real time, even from a journey perspective, even though it was a very rough journey. Anyone can go in and look at the dashboard and see how we are currently performing in certain areas of the experience. So I think that was an attempt at being more agile as you're saying this. I didn't really connect the dots until now,
Yeah.
but maybe that was one attempt at trying to do that.
Yeah, I like that point of view where you say like, look, let's at least have a rough draft of the journey. Let's build those journey dashboards, if you will.
Hmm.
So were they metric driven, quantifying like how many people are in this journey, volume based, how many people are converting? Are they actually like completing
Yeah.
this journey? Was it that
Yeah.
level
It
or
was
was it
very
also?
much a mix of, again, financial services. You know, when I left a financial services B2B organization, I didn't realize how good I had it in terms of data. So yes, we can capture those behavioral metrics, operational metrics. We can get like we did work on some things where there was a funnel to say we started off with new customers here, and over time, as the customer was going through that journey, there were attrition. They were for some reason attriting out of that journey, and we would have different metrics that can tell us those things. So yeah, on some level, we had that capability.
Yeah, because that's the fascinating thing, right? Where we are today. I was working with a insurance company, large scale insurance company here in Europe. And what they've done is saying like, okay, we have those metrics across the journeys, but it's volume based metrics, it's performance metrics, right? It's
Yeah,
quantified
exactly.
data. So what we then saw, what they were working with is say, okay, and now we use the unstructured feedback that we're collecting through all our
Yeah.
different channels and ways of listening to our customers. And we're going to look at those who have ultimately churned and what was the experience like they had in the early days versus like those who stayed. And they would be able to like segment those cohorts and look at the
Yep.
different
Yep.
feedback that they were giving.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was a fascinating way of overcoming like the QBR trap, if I may call it
Mm-hmm.
that, of
Mm-hmm.
like having near real time data on, hey, here's what's actually what they do, and here's why they're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very interesting. I think that's, coming from the military, right? That's a two-pronged strategy, right? You need your kind of quarterly big cadence, but you also need the more agile thing. And,
Yeah.
that's how you attack this beast. And so I think actually you need both, because they both serve different purposes. But yeah, no, it's an interesting point.
There are parallels to having shared language having clear single-threaded owners, like what you would typically see in a military
Mhm.
setup, to running an efficient experience organization. Tell me a little bit about your team structure, if you're willing to share. Like, how are you operating today when you think about brand and customer experience and also employee experience?
Yeah, so I sit on a central team that manages all of our that tries to connect brand, employee, and customer across all of our different business units, if you will. So it's a little bit of a still part of a center of excellence and working with the different stakeholders across the business and really just trying to create alignment, ways of working, right? Some of these more cultural pieces, because we basically have to align three different businesses or four different businesses across the organization. So it's a lot of alignment, ways of working, influence. Am I answering your question there? I don't.
Yeah, so that I'm seeing different operational models, right? One is the center of expertise, and then
Mhm.
basically you're serving the different businesses. So who are or what are the different roles that you have in that center of expertise?
Yeah, so I sit on the brand strategy and experience team. So we have colleagues who work on the brand strategy piece, and I work on the experience piece, the brand experience piece, which consists of the customer experience and the employee experience and how that rolls up to brand. So at the highest level, our team is very small. That's how we operate within the business, trying to connect these dots and making sure everything happens that way. So we're very much um, connectors in the organization, kind of creating those strategic links and helping everyone create alignments and understanding the bigger picture is how we operate. So yeah.
What is one of the ways that you found a way to connect those, right? Because there's many brands struggling to like tie customer and employee experience to brand. How do we
Hmm.
measure that? How do we create a consistent structure that everyone can follow? How do we create that shared language so that we all talk at the same thing at the same level of abstraction and
Yeah.
not like
Hmm.
mixing apples and
Hmm.
pears? Like, what are some of the ways that you have found that connection between those
Yeah.
three?
Yeah, so to me it always goes back to these are active conversations that I'm trying to influence and drive. So we're by no means have like achieved this here in my current organization, but how I'm thinking about it and how I thought about it in other organizations, even one of my prior role in customer experience, is that you need to have a shared language. That means you have to define and create that language, and that language needs to be tangible. It needs to be real. And some organizations or agencies will call it a North Star, some kind of one-page document or something that articulates this shared vision that everyone can physically see or hold. That says this is our customer promise, this is our vision, our ambition, and these are the behaviors that we want to uh, do so that we deliver on this customer promise. And so it's a document that shows what that vision is and articulates it very clear. So that's kind of one of the first things that every organization needs is to align all that, because once you have that vision, that very clear North Star, that's when you can really align not just brand, employee, or customer, but even down in businesses, you can start aligning journeys. You can start aligning stakeholders to say, this is what we're trying to do. So we need to be consistent in how we do things and deliver on this brand promise. And everyone can kind of get aligned to that. Because in my experience, you talk about vision and North Star and where we're going as an organization, but until somebody sees something that you can constantly share, people will buy into it. And so this really came from my time at Bank of America, where the CEO would share his Bank of America placement and it had what we do as a company, what we're trying to do. It was I saw it everywhere, and leaders would repeat it everywhere, and it was so effective. And I remember seeing that, thinking, okay, that is a vision. That's not an experience North Star. It's a more of a value statement, but something about a document that people share and see and know what it looks like to me is very powerful. Um, so that's kind of the primary way I see things.
Yeah. So from North Star linking to journeys. Can you give a tangible example of what that means? Because what I'm seeing, we have this funny rule at Data we call the 88, right? 80% of business leaders will say we are customer centric,
Oh yeah.
and then
Hmm.
8% of your customers agree, right? So, and this is a common stat that is actually true in many organizations. So
Hmm.
saying you are customer centric and putting it on a placement, having that North Star document is one thing,
Yeah.
but then actually connecting it to execution and actually doing it is a whole other thing. So
Yep.
casually you said like, yeah, then we have the North Star and we're linking journeys to it and to make the alignment. Like, that's hard to do in practice. So can you give an
Oh,
example
yes.
of what that actually means, how you're doing that?
Yeah. So when in the customer experience world, now more in the brand piece, but there's still a very strong link, is that anytime we would do journey work, we would have some organizations had a North Star, and we would be very clear to say this is the North Star that's going to align this particular journey within certain parts of our business. And so we would just use that to make sure that in any kind of journey work that we're doing, that's delivering on that North Star. I mean, use it as like a checklist almost. That's about as real tangible as I can get because we just whether it was at Bank of America because we did something very similar at Bank of America or here at Elsevier, it's extremely difficult. You're right. It's not. It's still very much theory sometimes. Um, my work now is really focusing on what is that vision, that North Star, and then how do we define those behaviors for the organization, and that's where my role comes in now in terms of employee experience and customer experience because once you start talking about behaviors and what we need to do, that's a EX and a CX and a brand thing. So those are the conversations I'm trying to influence here at Elsevier is getting the company to think through, okay, what are those behaviors? And that's a very high level, big strategic first step. But that's just where we're at now.
If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave a review. It makes all the difference. The Experience Edge podcast is where I interview business leaders, CX pioneers, and the best designers who share their insight on creating business impact, having an edge on the customer experience. Do you want more exclusive content and behind the scenes access? Check out the Experience Edge podcast on YouTube and LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing. Now let's get back to the conversation. What makes it compelling? You've seen now 3 major organizations from the inside. What makes it compelling for leadership team to say, this is so important, we have to do this right now. We're going on this big transformation and we are willing to bring new rituals in, change behaviors, and expect people to follow along. Like, what's behind that? What is driving that in the companies that you've seen this?
Yep. To me, there's a framework that I use sometimes, and I've spoken on it in different contexts, where every organization has a business strategy, right? There's certain KPIs and goals they're trying to achieve. Then every organization has a business strategy. Then they should have a brand strategy that outlines what is that promise you're trying to make. And then there should be an experience strategy that helps you deliver not just on that brand strategy or that customer promise, but then ultimately, how does that deliver on your business strategy? So to me, that's kind of the conversation that I use with stakeholders to say, listen, the idea of behaviors and culture, it's ultimately about delivering on that customer promise or on that brand promise. And we spend so many resources, so much time defining what this means for the organization. Let's take it one step further and get the company culturally delivering on our behaviors and on that brand promise, because that's any go-to-market organization or any organization that takes go-to-market seriously, behaviors is a part of that. And so that's the conversation that I have with stakeholders and things that I'm working on now.
What is a myth or a misconception about CX strategy that you think needs debunking or needs more
Yeah,
attention in the
yeah. I
world?
mean, it's to me, it's the fact that it's a whole separate strategy from a brand strategy, right? And if I've always found it ironic, something I've learned over time, is that customer experience professionals were so key on breaking down silos and barriers and connecting departments, and yet how often are we as customer experience professionals talking to the brand strategy people, right? Because the brand is out there trying to sell something about this is our promise to you as customers, and then yet we're not connected to the hip with those people who are saying this is our promise, and then the customer experience is all about how do we deliver that promise. And so I've been in plenty of organizations where that's divorced. We're not even thinking about that. We don't even know who our brand people are. We know who our operations or our customer service, right? Those people, but brand, that's not us. We're doing something different. And so to me, that's the biggest misconception. And this is something that I've only learned in the past couple of years is that strategic connection behind the brand promise we're making, which is brand, and how do we deliver on that promise, which is sometimes in the realm of customer experience.
All right. Or as John Cutler, I don't know if you know him, says, marketing is making a promise that product has to keep.
Yep. Yeah. I've heard some elements of that. Exactly. And so, yeah, it's just, yeah, I think I find, yeah, the example that I use that I think about sometimes is like my wife telling my daughter something, and then I don't know about it. And so, therefore, there's like a disconnect. And so sometimes you kind of see that.
Right. So, what makes the case for executives to see it from the same or see it the same way that you do? Because CX sometimes gets seen as either too soft, right?
Mhm.
Oh, nice, you are representing the voice of the customer and you talk to customers, and but it's soft, right? There's typically like data around the surveys, but the qualitative aspects of the work is sometimes seen as soft, whereas brand is more accepted, right? There is
Mhm.
usually budget for brand, it's owned by marketing, and there's dedicated teams around this. So it's more common to be funding that and to be doing something with brand. Well, you could argue it's just as soft as CX or even more soft because it's
Mhm.
nothing, right? It's just like, what do people say when you're not in the room about you? Like that maybe is your brand,
Yeah.
but how do we deliver that? Well, that's where CX comes in. So, what do you say to executives who believe CX is soft and intangible?
Yeah. No, that's a very pressing issue. I mean, we've dealt with that. Every organization I've dealt with that for sure. Conversations around ROI or the value of customer experience. That's table stakes now. So I don't even really have those conversations, although they're very much needed. Um, I I keep coming back to with stakeholders in terms of customer experience, um, is that it's it's about delivering on that brand promise. And I know that sounds still soft or not even clear, but um, to me, it's about articulating that fact and telling that story that I said it earlier. Every organization has a business strategy, and then they should have a brand strategy. But what is that experience strategy? That's the next phase that every organization is missing. And customer experience is one out of the four experiences of business. And so it's a big piece. And so how do we get our teams to deliver on that brand promise and really taking that lens of customer experience is a go-to market enabler, right? Because it's about not just defining that experience, but it's about helping people deliver on it or fixing operational issues. And these are all go-to market um, capabilities that CX can't help deliver on.
So,
Um,
what are the four parts in your mind that are so CX is one part of the experience strategy you said. So you have like what
Yeah, there's four core
employee.
experiences of business, and I'm not smart enough to come up with this on my own. This is Qualtrics. I saw something years ago, um, and so there's four core experiences of business: brand, customer, product, and employee. Right? Those
Mhm.
are those are all four. And so most organizations maybe only focus on product. Right? How many organizations do we know are product-led organizations? It's all about the product, yet they forget about the employee, the brand, and the customer. So a very healthy organization thinks about all four, and they're all connected. Um, mhm.
Got it. So when do we know it's working? So we are connecting them, whether it's through a North Star canvas, whether it's through an actionable strategy, whether it's through fill in the blank. Okay. So
Mhm.
we have those experience layers. What are the signals that it's working? Like, how would you define success? How would you now, as you're going through this work again, like, how would you define, like, our team is successful helping the business deliver on this? Like,
Mhm.
when do you measure success? How do you go about that?
Yeah. So my high level thoughts are with that is that again, my point of view is that customer and employee experience align and deliver on that brand experience. And so to me, it's all about that brand delivery and measuring what that brand delivery is in terms of overall satisfaction and advocacy. And the way I think about that is through um, the satisfaction would be like your customer satisfaction metrics, and advocacy would be your traditional NPS. Now, those metrics aren't perfect. There's a lot of things out there, but there's something to be said about measuring how well you're delivering on the brand from an experience perspective in terms of satisfaction and advocacy, because you need both. You need operationally, are we doing what needs to be done? And then are we creating that word of mouth recommendation types of things? So that's how I always think about it. And in terms of making it more holistic, in terms of advocacy, we'll just take NPS, for example. I was in an organization, in a financial services organization, that had a really good triangle that showed you all the different ways of how we measure that, everything from the holistic relationship level all the way down to the particular product or even journey level. And so, along with the the ENPS, the employee experience piece. So, all of those metrics are kind of trending in the right direction or around your certain baselines. And you know you are delivering. That you're in the ballpark, right? Because no metrics are perfect, but at least you have the trends and the data that's pointing you to for measuring these three or four elements in terms of employee overall kind of relationship or market and that customer, those three things, you kind of know where you're headed. And to me, that's how I think about it. And these are, again, things that we're trying to do here in different organizations or even here at Elsevier.
So what about the business? They go in and say, okay, James, nice, you have your satisfaction metrics and your NPS, all good, but we care about retention. We care about acquisition. We care about adoption. We care about a P&L. So how are we going to connect the dots?
Yeah. You're triggering my experience management conversations, right? Where I talk like this, then they're like, okay, James, that's nice. Okay, let's talk about something real here, right? Retention and revenue. These are things too that we try to care about and we try to link. Um, it's, it's difficult. I don't know if I have the right answer or solution to how do you get to those metrics, because these are things that we do care about and try to focus on and try to tell that story. But um, I'm personally not involved right now in some of that work, but I know it's conversations that my leader is having.
Because this is the difficult thing, right? For a lot of customer experience teams, if they struggle to have that link that ties it back to what the business cares about, then you can have all the insight in the world, but no one will listen.
Yeah.
Because they're chasing another KPI that is important to them, and they have probably ideas how to do this. And you have a wonderful pain point, a big friction that you want to solve. It's really hard to connect the dots. Like some of the examples that I love to share always is that when customers say, look, it's the simplest way to start is when they say we have in our cost of doing business, in our cost of service, we have 30-40% of low value calls, right? We can't do much with those people that are calling, and basically it's a cost to the business. So then you go, like, why are they calling in the first place? And that data is available. Okay, well, let's look at what the experience is like around the typical spikes, right? They usually have like a top 10 of contact reasons where, low value calls exist and they're a huge cost. So it's not their responsibility to fix it. But there is problems in the business that keep customers calling back about the same problem. So when they start uncovering those, looking at the journeys that influence those frictions in the experience customers are having with your product or service, that would trigger them to call. Well, if you go way about that and remove those frictions, yes, satisfaction will go up, NPS will go up, sure, but it's a lagging indicator. What actually is happening is you're bringing the cost of your business down because people just stop calling. Their experience doesn't have friction. They don't need to be calling you to patchwork what your product or service isn't delivering. So that's a great example of where I see a lot of organizations are actually able to start connecting the dots, and they just simply start with the cost side of the business because that's the easiest to prove out, and they have control over that.
Yep, you're right. And so I do remember a number of projects around that particular conversation because it is the easiest thing to prove. You're right, around that cost reduction, cost savings, operational kind of approach to it. And so that is a classic tried and true approach that I've done in lots of organizations. That's probably the easiest thing to do.
Right. Switching gears a little bit, how do you think about where AI is heading for customer experience functions? And I'm not particularly interested in talking about the next way to interact with your customers and
Mhm.
using the most fancy LLM to give them answers to all the questions they have. But I'm looking at the change in dynamic of internal collaboration, right? You are remote working for Elsevier. You work with so many different people. How is AI reshaping the way that you are working on the customer experience inside your company?
Yeah, there's, I can give you a number of operational things I won't speak to per se, but um, I know in terms of artificial AI being used, to me, it's about, at least for right now, what I can speak to, it's maybe around what's an easy way to create consistent and targeted messaging in a way that anybody can do it, right? And so from an experience perspective, if I think of some of our operations or finance people, they're not traditionally thinking about how our messaging is communicating with those who are due on payments or those who are responding to customer service inquiries. So how can artificial intelligence do that for them and help them think through that in a way to deliver a really good, not just messaging, but overall experience that delivers on the brand? And so these are some things that I'm thinking about is how do I use it as how do I use it to augment what these teams need to do in terms of helping it do the hard work for them and to help them do the hard thinking of experience or messaging or whatever that is. And then we just come alongside them to say, give us your parameters, give us your input, we'll put it in here and it'll spit something out, and then we'll see if it delivers on what we're trying to do. So that's how I'm currently thinking about it. And as some ambitions I have with some teams is that aspect of artificial intelligence. How does it help us craft a certain messaging that resonates with customers that may or may not be used to a certain way of being communicated to?
What is the biggest way of AI helping you to understand customers better? Is there ways that because you said like in the banks you had so much data available, right? Now it's maybe less so, but still, you're one of the larger
Mm-hmm.
enterprise brands in the world. So there's probably a lot of data
Mm-hmm.
to go about. So how do you think about using AI to analyze faster, get more clarity on what customers need, and be more proactive in
Yeah.
serving them?
I had an ambition, I don't know if it was a year or two ago, and it kind of other things happened. But I still think there's something to be said around having an AI capability where it's linked to our survey and verbatim data, or even some operational data. But then you can start asking questions to the AI in terms of just what I was trying to do was how do you have a capability where all your customer information, insights, personas are in there, and then all of your current customer feedback is in there, and then someone who's in operational function or a design function, you can basically interview and talk to AI and say, tell me what this customer persona is saying about X, in the past 6 months, and then tells you everything you needed to. So more from an insights perspective, because we have the data and the sources, we just need to marry them into a single platform and then train. This is come back to the capabilities, train our people to say, this is how you can use AI to interview a persona and have them tell you what their pain points are based on the most recent data, whether it's operational behavior or survey related. And so that was my ambition. Those are pretty big ambitions, but it's like everything else, it's very complicated to do. But I still have that kind of vision or dream of doing that because we have a lot of whether it's unstructured or structured data that could quote unquote be interviewed and used for insights.
What makes you think it's hard to do? Like, what's the hardest part about it?
You know, it's connecting multiple data sources. There's some legal requirements, those kinds of things that stop us. There's a cost to it. So it's just a lot of other competing priorities will get in the way, right? And so a lot of teams, myself, are thinking about it, but there's other fires we need to put out, other priorities we need to worry about. And so it kind of falls by the wayside, even though people think it's really important and interesting. But how do we move beyond it's not just interesting, but also vital to our next stage?
right? So if you had a magic wand and you had like one big pesky problem away, in the realm of customer experience, like can be in your
Mhm.
company, but can also be more broadly in the industry itself. Like, what would it be? What is getting in our way to like focus on what
Mm,
really matters?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that if I could have a magic wand, I think I would. To me, it doesn't matter where. It doesn't matter if you're a customer experience or sales or wherever. It's to me, it's about how do we change the mindset of all colleagues to not just focus on ourselves and our own KPIs, but to really to have that outside in perspective and to focus on the customer and to put their needs first, whether it's an internal or external customer. So to me, it's about, if I could wave that magic wand to summarize it, I would change the hearts and minds of all of our people to say everything we do has an impact towards the customer. Um, and I'll give a quick backstory of how that frames my thinking. Is, I studied religion for a number of years, different worldviews and things like that. And there's, and at least in the Christian religion, there's Jesus who has this prayer that says he's trying to bring. He has this phrase that says, "On earth as it is in heaven," and so he's trying to bring a little bit of heaven down to earth. And when I think about it from that perspective, it's like, if I'm in heaven and heaven's on earth, if that's the case, then in heaven I expect to be listened to. I expect to be understood. I expect people to empathize with me. And from the customer experience discipline, I think if all of us were focused on bringing a little bit of heaven down to earth in the work that we do, and whether it's internal or external customers or colleagues, we put them first. We listen to their needs. We think about them. We empathize with them. That will change how we work, and that will change how the customer is ultimately impacted. To me, that's very, very powerful, and kind of, why I'm in this discipline is to make the world a better place through better experiences where people listen to you, understand who you are, care about you, want to serve you. And so to me, that's very powerful, but it all comes back to changing the hearts and minds of colleagues and to wave that magic wand and to say, okay, so what? You're in sales, you have sales goals, but there's a human at the end of it, and let's think about them and what they need. And if we can do that, I think that's a game changer. It's a game changer because everything else will fall into place.
So where are you on this? Like, should customer experience be a function at all?
Oh, that's a yes, 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 because you need somebody thinking about it. You need a dedicated team who's out there fighting for it, trying to make the case to senior leaders and requesting budget and having those hard and sometimes difficult conversations to say, listen, we need a budget for this. And you're just kind of that pesky fly on the wall that's just constantly poking to say, hey, customer experience is a thing, customer experience is a thing. Because like I said earlier, it's not intuitive. Our own internal needs will outweigh those of our customers. This is for humans, it's human nature. And so, yes, I think you need a team because you need someone to think about it, to be that kind of pesky fly on the wall that's constantly there as a reminder. And I think if you don't have that, it'll be even twice as hard.
So you waved your magic wand and now everything is away. And we are actually like saying what we are doing, what we say, right? We're saying we're having a CX strategy. We're going to be customer centric. James waves his magic wand. All those problems go away. Do we need a CX function?
Yes. And I'll say this is because we're often customer experience teams are often kind of just let's fix what's broken and let's just fix that experience. But rarely do we ever think of, are we actually going to innovate on the customer experience? Teams rarely think about this, trying to fix what's broken. We never think of, oh man, what would be the, imagine if we did X, Y, and Z and the customer experiences, whatever. We never think of that innovation aspect of it. It's always that operational, let's just fix what's broken. So to me, yes, that's the next stage of an organization is once you kind of fix that operational piece and everyone agrees it's important, now it's okay, now it's really time to be innovative and to do some really amazing things because everyone gets it now.
Right.
That would be very exciting. I would be very excited for that.
Maybe that's also the relic from the past, right? Like CX is typically not directly, but like definitely shaped by customer service, right? CX was typically seen as the end of service or part of service, because when people have a bad experience or frustration, they're going to call. And you want to use that as an opportunity to turn around the customer experience, keep the customer, or make them happy so that they come back the next time. So by definition, the function was created to fight the friction, to fight the pain points, in your words, right? So it was never designed to think about what can we do that is already going well, what customers love about us, and let's take them by the hand and do more of that for all the others that are not getting this part of the experience. So
because oftentimes customer experience professionals, myself included, are always negative. This is broken. This is messed up. We're never kind of like, man, think what's possible. Right. There's so many things that we can do. We rarely.
No wonder the business doesn't listen to us, right?
That's where I was getting. That's where I was getting at. If I'm a leader and James is coming knocking on my door complaining about metrics and things like that, like I don't want James in the room, right? Yeah, give me someone with some vision and say, man, we're going to create this experience. It's going to be amazing. It's going to generate sales or increase retention, and it's going to differentiate us in the marketplace. And yes, that's exciting, right? That's who you want. So it's trying to find that balance. You need both. Yeah.
So do we have, as a profession, as a customer experience profession, a language issue that we are focusing on pain points and friction? And, so what if we turn it around and change our language and talk about opportunities and innovation and customer experience? And so do we have a language problem? I see you're nodding, for folks not seeing this, like James is nodding, but like, what is the problem with our language? How should we think about that?
A vision problem, right? Of what the discipline is how I would word it. We have a small vision of what it's little CX. That's how I would describe it, right? We need a big CX because that's how we will make an impact with stakeholders, with leaders. Man, we got to be excited about what we can do as professionals and what the discipline brings to a business. To me, it's a vision issue. So maybe that's my magic wand. Is we all are able to cast vision in the proper way, right? Not only can we bring a little bit of heaven to earth, but we have a big vision. And even I think even that language of bringing some part of heaven down to earth, that's a big CX vision. So maybe that's all kind of tied in. But yes, we have a vision problem.
Amen to that. James, thank you so much for being with me here today. Good. Folks, this was James from Little Big CX on a journey to change the world for the better. When people want to know more about you or hear about the work that you've been doing at big banks, there's a lot of financial customer experience leaders listening to this, or maybe building brands and employee experience. Where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always on there and always monitoring what's happened. So easiest thing to do is go to LinkedIn and connect with me, and I'm open to having any kind of conversation. Little CX, big CX, you name it, everything in between.
Nice. I can see the headline for the show come to be. So let's see what it will be. James, thank you so much for joining me today. You were fantastic.
Thank you. It was an honor.
All right, and that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found it valuable today, don't forget to subscribe to The Experience Edge on your favorite podcast channel, leave a review, and share it with your team. I'd be delighted. Today's episode was brought to you by Daydo, the AI journey management solution for enterprise. To have an edge on your business strategy and to know why your customers do what they do, visit daydo.com and explore more resources to accelerate your customer experience game. And remember, the journey to creating customer-centric impact never ends, and here's always a new edge to discover in doing things differently. Next week, new episode. Until then, pushing the edge, stay inspired. See you in the next episode.